Go ahead and call this order of the Columbus Police Civilian Review Board to order. Good to see you all. I'm going to start a little out of order just because we have not yet reached a quorum, and I'm going to turn it over to the Inspector General for an update from the office.
Well, good evening. Well, I should say it still is good evening, not good afternoon. So in front of you, you should have a summary of the investigations that we've done for the month of May. As you can see, we did some additions in there where we talked about doing some comparison. If there's any questions, I'd be willing to answer any questions. If not, I think that's fine for the update for me for now.
Are there any questions from the board for the IG? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate the update and the information. Just wanted to bring everyone's attention again to two issues. First, please don't forget to submit your questions for chain of command. We will be having a visitor from CPD with that process coming later in this year, and we need to have our questions prepared. So if you have not noticed already, board members, if you have not sent your questions to Ms. Brock, please do so. And Ms. Brock, what is the deadline that you asked for?
We say the end of June.
End of June, so before our next meeting, okay?
Yes.
And then my next update is for community members. We are back at 3 vacancies, and so we would love to have you join us. Applications are open for board seats, so please, you can look through the mayor's office. I think you can get there even through the IG's webpage, but we'd love to have you, so feel free to apply. We'd love to have you join us, and we hope to have those vacancies filled sooner than later. All right, so we, even though we are without a quorum, we are going to go ahead and get to our regular business. We can hold the information open until we reach a quorum, and then we can go back and vote on those issues. So first, turning to the minutes from our previous meeting, hopefully everyone has had the opportunity to take a look at those. Does anyone have any additions, corrections, or anything else that you would like to propose?
I think we have a matter that we want to table, but I guess we can't do that. We just won't report on it, right?
You can at least put the matter on the record for now.
Board Member Ford, which I can't remember the numbers of the one we're requesting a hold on.
Did I give you that one?
I don't think you did.
Was it a case from our previous meeting?
One of our readouts.
Yes,
now.
it is.
Oh, one of your current readouts?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Ones that we're going to report out today.
Oh, okay. We can wait on that until anyone have any additions for the minutes? Changes, edits? None? None, okay. I'm going to hold this open. I will ask for a motion to approve them as is once we reach quorum. Okay? All right.
Do you want that number now?
Sure.
The table. We're waiting on some videos from the DIG to review. So case number 2025-0140, we'd like to table until the next meeting if we could.
0140, okay.
2025-0140. We're just waiting to review some BWC.
Okay. All right, with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Jones for a report out from Committee 1.
All right, so we had a couple of cases. There are a couple that we need to have some discussion about, but I'll go ahead and move forward. So the first case is 2025-0047, On January 21st, 2025, the Department of the Inspector General received a complaint alleging misconduct by the Columbus Division of Police Officers Hotline. The complaint alleged officers, one, had a dangerous entrance into the home, that they were dismissive of evidence that he provided, and should have called a social worker to assess his brother's mental health. The DIG investigation consisted of an interview with the complainant, an interview with the officers, a review of CAD data, body-worn camera footage, as well as CPD policies and procedures. In regards to allegation 1, the investigation found no evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegation. The officers were actually granted permission to enter the home. They announced themselves before entering and did not enter with any weapons drawn. Therefore, it is recommended this allegation be closed as unfounded. In regards to allegation 2, the investigation found no evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegation. An officer was shown a video by the complainant taken on his phone, and the officer provided feedback regarding the evidence. So that one is recommended that it's closed as unfounded. And then allegation 3, there was no evidence to support that allegation either. Officer stated there were no indicators of mental health concerns in regards to the complainant's brother, and CPD officers do not call social workers to assist them on the run. So it is recommended that allegation be closed as unfounded. Next case, 0070. The complainant filed a complaint with the City of Columbus Department of Inspector General against the Columbus Division of Police. The complainant alleged the officer was involved in misconduct and used profanity, as well as refused to provide his name and badge number information, and did not have his BWC device activated during the traffic stop. The Columbus Department of Inspector General investigation consisted of telephone interviews with the complainant, a review of CAD data, a review of the body-worn camera footage, a review of the cruiser video as well as CPD policies. And so in regards to the 3 allegations, one, that the officer used profanity, that he refused to provide his name, and did not activate his body-worn camera, the DIG found no evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegation. So it is recommended that each allegation be closed as unfounded. We agreed with the finding of the Inspector General on that case. This case, 0075, on January 28, 2025, the complainant filed a complaint with the Columbus Department of Inspector General alleging misconduct by a CPD officer. The complainant said that he was in a local market when an officer approached him and requested that he step outside of the market with him. The complainant alleged the officer used excessive force when he placed him in a police vehicle to conduct a search. The complainant said the officer placed him in handcuffs, and 2, the officer would not check the handcuffs after he advised the handcuffs were too tight. The DIG conducted an investigation. It consisted of an interview, date-specific photos pertaining to the complaint, interviews with the focus officer, as well as a review of CAD data, BWC footage, a review of information from the Emergency Communications Center, a review of CPD policies and procedures. And so, in reference to allegation 1, that the officers used excessive force, the DIG found no evidence to substantiate that, so that one is recommended that it is unfounded. And then pertaining to the allegation regarding the handcuffs being too tight, that is allegation 2. The investigation found no evidence that the alleged incident happened, and therefore the officers' actions were not in violation of CPD policies. And so that one, the recommendation is that it is closed with a finding of exonerated. The officer actually checked the tightness of the handcuffs, and so that's what happened with that. So we agree with that finding as well. In case 0081, on January 29, 2025, the complainant filed a complaint with the Department of Inspector General alleging misconduct by CPD officers. The complainant alleged the CPD officers stole their vehicle. And so their review was conducted with CAD data, crash report with the Department of Public Safety, a review of body-worn camera, applicable policies and procedures for CPD. And so what happened was the complainant's vehicle was parked on the side of the road unattended after it was involved in a car accident. So CPD officers actually towed the complainant's vehicle per CPD policy. So therefore, it is recommended that that allegation be closed as unfounded. We agreed with the finding of that case. Case 0097, this one is February 5th, 2025. Complainant filed a complaint alleging misconduct by Columbus police officers. The complaint stemmed from an arrest of the complainant who was engaged in underage drinking, as well as assaulting two police officers outside of a bar called Uno. The complainant alleged the officers used excessive force on her during the arrest, and specifically, the complainant alleged the officers held her face down and vomit when she was in the back of a police vehicle. So DIG conducted an investigation. They reviewed, they conducted an interview with the complainant, an interview with the two focus officers, the U-10 report, which is the use of force report, and a review of both the cruiser video, applicable CPD policies and procedures, and there was no body-worn camera footage available for this incident as the officers were on special duty. However, there was CVS footage of the rear of the police vehicle, so they were able to review that footage. The investigation found no evidence to suggest the officers used excessive force. Based on the CVS video footage, no CPD officer actually put the complainant's face down and vomited. And so that allegation or that case, they recommended that it be closed as unfounded. So this case in particular is another incident where we have a special duty officer not having a body-worn camera on. And so unfortunately, you know, they weren't able to capture that. So our question to the DIG was when the policy was implemented for special duty officers to start wearing body-worn cameras, and Stephanie sent us the policy. And so if I remember correct, I believe this incident happened before the implementation of that policy, and so that's what happened with this case. But we agree with the findings of that one. This is case 0102. On February 6, 2025, the City of Columbus Department of Inspector General received a complaint that alleged a police officer was rude to the complainant by speaking to her like she was beneath him and advising her that she could not keep calling the police. So the DIG investigation consisted of an interview with the complainant, an interview with the focus officer, a review of CAD data as well as the body-worn camera, and the investigation found no evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegation that a CPD officer was rude to her. The officer did not violate CPD policies, and so that one it is recommended that it be closed as unfounded. Making sure this is the correct one. Okay, yeah, that's correct. Next one is 0124. This case, on February 12, 2025, the complainant filed a complaint with the City of Columbus DIG alleging misconduct by a Columbus police officer. The complainant stated that on February 11, 2025, officers arrived at his home with assault-style weapons. The complainant said an officer knocked at his door, and when he opened the door, he saw several officers with their guns drawn at him. The complainant alleged the officer did not identify himself when he answered the door. The Columbus DIG investigation consisted of interviews with the complainant and his wife, interview with the focus officer, a review of CAD data, body-worn camera footage, the Emergency Communication Center information, as well as CPD policies and procedures that are applicable to this case. So pertaining to allegation 1, the complainant alleged the officer did not identify himself when he answered the door. The investigation found no CPD directives or policies that direct officers to identify themselves when they're responding to a run on a wanted person. That's a 10 code. The investigation found no evidence that alleged the incident happened, and so it's supported by CPD policies and procedures. This one, I believe the DIG, yes, closed this case with a finding of exonerated. And this case in particular, we would like to send this back for further review. So with this case, the officers actually arrived at the incorrect address. They were at the wrong address. And they basically just used a Google map to direct them there, but they didn't do a cross-check of the address to make sure it was the correct one. And so we just think that is a gross, I don't know, not doing their due diligence, what they should have been doing. And so for that one, we currently disagree with the findings as they are, but we would actually like to recommend this one go back for further investigation of the Department of Inspector General. The next case, 0142, on February 20, 2025, the complainant filed a complaint with the City of Columbus Department of the Inspector General alleging misconduct by a CPD officer. The complaint stemmed from a call for service the officer was dispatched to when the complainant answered the door to her residence with a knife in her hand. The complainant alleged the officer threatened her with a firearm. The officer used excessive force on her, and the officer did not complete a report when requested. The investigation consisted of an interview with the complainant, a review of CAD data, a review of the body-worn camera footage, as well as applicable CPD policies and procedures. And so in regard to allegation 1, the investigation found the officer's actions were supported through CPD policy. The officer actually did not threaten the complainant, although the complainant felt threatened, if that makes any sense. Therefore, that allegation is recommended that it be closed as unfounded. In regards to allegation 2, the investigation found the officer never used a reportable use of force on the complainant. The level 0 use of force that was implemented was found to be reasonable and within CPD policy. So that allegation, number 2, is recommended that it be closed as unfounded. And then in regards to allegation 3, the complainant never requested a report. Additionally, the officer would not have been required to complete a report for that specific type of incident. So therefore, it is requested, it is recommended that that allocation be closed as unfounded as well. This one is case 0155. On February 26, 2025, the Department of Inspector General received a complaint via the CPD Internal Affairs Bureau. The complaint stemmed from an interaction between a complainant and a CPD officer responding to a 10-4. It was an auto crash hit skip property damage call on January 4th, 2025. The complainant alleged the officer failed to investigate despite clear evidence, and 2, the officer left them without any resolution. The complainant also stated the officer ignored multiple attempts to contact them. The investigation consisted of an interview with the complainant, a review of documented contact between CPD's Emergency Communications Center as well as the complainant, a review of body-worn camera footage, a review of CAD data, a review of the traffic crash report, as well as applicable policies and procedures. And so, in regard to allegation 1, the investigation actually revealed that there was no evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegation. The investigation revealed the officers followed procedure for this type of run. So therefore, it is recommended the allegation be closed as unfounded. In regards to allegation 2, the investigation revealed no evidence to substantiate that allegation as well. The crash report indicated officers made contact with the complainant on March 7th to inform her the incident had been assigned to an officer for follow-up, and subsequent investigative efforts were made. The complainant made no mention of this during the telephone interviews with the Columbus DIG interview that was conducted on March 10th. And so, therefore, that allegation, it is recommended that it be closed as unfounded. The next case is 0168. On March 3rd, 2025, the complainant filed a complaint with the Department of Inspector General. This complaint stemmed from an interaction between the complainant and CPD officers who were responding to a 1033, a person with a gun call on February 11, 2025. It involved a leasing dispute between two parties. The complainant alleged officers entered her residence with weapons drawn, and two officers took no actions against the individuals who made the false reports. So Columbus DIG conducted an investigation. It consisted of a review of body-worn camera, a review of CAD data, a review of applicable policies and procedures. And so in regard to allegation 1, the investigation revealed the officers, they did enter the complainant's residence with their weapons drawn. However, they were dispatched on a gun run, and so that is typically the response. So that one, it is recommended that the allegation be closed with a finding of exonerated. In regard to allegation 2, the investigation revealed no evidence to substantiate that allegation. The officers took appropriate action for that type of run. The officers did take action against the 911 callers and advised them of the proper course of action to accomplish their desired results. And so that one was closed with a recommendation or a finding of unfounded as well. Case 0188, this stemmed from an incident that occurred on, or the complaint was filed on March 10th, 2025. The incident stemmed from a situation that happened at a high school girls playoff basketball game where CPD officers were working special duty. The complainant alleged the officers used excessive force on him to remove him from the basketball game, and that one of the officers used a derogatory or profane word directed towards the complainant. So there was an investigation that consisted of an interview with the complainant, an interview with two independent civilian witnesses, a review of gymnasium footage from the incident, as well as CPD policies and procedures. There was no body-worn camera footage available for the incident because the officers were on special duty. I think this one is similar to the other one where this was before the implementation. Yeah, this was before the implementation of the body cams for special duty officers. That was the question that we had about this one. But the investigation revealed, in terms of allegations 1 and 2, that it be closed as unfounded, and so we agreed with that as well. Case 0191, this one was March 11th, 2025. The Columbus DIG received a allegation of misconduct via the hotline. And so the complainant alleged the officer physically pushed the complainant to leave, and the complainant indicated that it was rude when an officer told the complainant and her sister that, quote unquote, "this is America," when they asked for him not to touch her, citing their religion. So the DIG's investigation consisted of an interview with the complainant, an interview with the focus officer, a review of CAD data, as well as cell phone footage that captured the complainant, CPD policies and procedures. In regards to allegation 1, the investigation found the complainant and her sister were asked to leave the premises. The store staff requested assistance from a special duty officer. The officer directed the complainant and her sister to leave, but they were slow to comply. So the officer placed his hand on the small of the back of one of the sisters and gestured towards the other. So when the officer was told not to touch the complainant, he did immediately remove his hand from her. At no time did the officer push either the sister or the complainant. Therefore, it is recommended that that allegation be closed as unfounded. In regards to allegation 2, the investigation found the complainant and her sister made a faith-based objection to the sister being touched by a male. The officer stated, "This is America," and immediately withdrew his hand. The tone and demeanor of the officer was not hostile or rude. The officer made a statement of fact. Therefore, it is recommended that this allegation be closed with the finding of unfounded. This case, 0191, we disagree with the findings of this allegation because whereas the statement, "This is America," is true, there seems to be a disregard for the religious practices of the individuals. And so it seems to be that there are some cultural biases that might be in play here that should have been taken into consideration when handling the situation or even making such a comment. And as such, we disagree with the findings of this one. In terms of next case,
What finding would your group have found instead?
that it was disrespectful. Let me see here. Let me go back to the allegations. Oh, that they said that the comment wasn't rude, and we disagree with that. So allegation 2,
Would be sustained?
sustained.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. This is 0208. January 27, 2025, the complainant filed a complaint with the City of Columbus DIG. The complainant said on January 4th and 13th of 2025, while driving his vehicle, he was stopped by CPD officers. In both dates, he was issued citations. Complainant alleged during the traffic stop on January 4th, the officer did not identify himself, and the second is that the officer did not indicate the reason for the traffic stop. The complainant also alleged during the traffic stop on January 13th, he felt the officer harassed him because it was the same officer who had pulled him over 9 days prior to that stop. The DIG's investigation consisted of interviews with the complainant, both focus officers, witness CPD officers, a review of CAD data, body-worn camera footage, review of information from the Emergency Communications Center, as well as applicable CPD policies and procedures. So allegation 1, the complainant alleged during the traffic stop, the officers did not identify himself. The investigation found evidence that alleged the incident happened, and the incident is supported by CPD policy. So that one is recommended that it's closed with the finding of exonerated. In terms of allegation 2, complainant alleged the officer did not indicate the reason for the stop. There is actually no evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegations, so that one is recommended that it be closed as unfounded. And then allegation 3, that the complainant felt the officer harassed him because it was the same officer who pulled him over. The investigation found no evidence that the officer harassed the complainant during either of the 2 traffic stops, and there was no evidence to support that allegation, so it's recommended that it be closed as unfounded. We agreed with those recommendations as well. And then lastly, this is case 0231. On March 6, 2025, the Columbus Department of Inspector General received an allegation of misconduct via the DIG's email address. The complainant alleged the officer was driving erratically, tailgating the complainant at high-speed race. The officer got out of the vehicle with guns drawn, yelled at the complainant to put their hands out of the window, and that the officer was rude when he stated to the complainant he was on the location by choice. DIG investigation consisted of an interview with the complainant, a review of CAD data, review of the cruiser video system, review of body-worn cameras, a review of CPD policies and procedures. And so, in regards to allegation 1, the investigation found the officer was responding to a shot spotter alert and witnessed a vehicle traveling away from the immediate area of the alert. So the officer reacted quickly to maintain visibility of the vehicle, and he immediately executed a U-turn and closed the distance. There was no evidence that the officer drove erratically while the police vehicle maintained a close distance. So therefore, it is recommended that allegation be closed as unfounded. And then in terms of allegation 2, the investigation found the officers did exit their vehicle with their weapons drawn and directed the occupant to place her hands outside of the window. Those actions are consistent with CPD policies for a high-risk traffic stop, so it's recommended that be closed as exonerated. And then allegation 3, the investigation found the officer did tell the complainant that he was assigned to that area by his choice. However, at no point during the interaction was the officer rude. He actually spoke calmly and attempted several times to explain to the complainant the reason for the stop. So therefore, it is recommended that allegation be closed with a finding of unfounded. So those are all of our allegations, and we have 2 here. I guess we would do these separately. So let's see, I think it's 0124 was one that we sent back for additional review. And then 0191 is the one we disagree with. So in terms of case number 0047, 0070, 0075, 0081, 0097, 0102, 0142, 0155, 0168, 0188, 0208, and 0231, we agree with the DIG's finding, and so we take that up for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
So we got a motion on the floor. May I have a second? Yes.
Mr. Strickland came in a little late, and he missed the first 7 case presentations. So for purposes of discussion, deliberation, and voting, just the 4 members who are present can cast votes for that. And then anything from 142 on, he can participate.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tobias. I've got an open motion on all the cases from Committee 1, save for 25-0124, 25-0191. May I have a second, please? Okay. Any discussion or questions on any of those for Committee 1? Okay. I would like to take I'm going to split them in half. So we're going to take a vote on the first 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the ones that Mr. Strickland was not here for. That's 0047, 0070, 0075, 0081, 0097, and 0102. All in favor of accepting those as presented, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Okay. All right, moving on to case number 0142, 0155, 0168, 0188, 0208, and 0231. All in favor of accepting those as recommended, please raise your hands. Okay, motions carry. Back to you, Dr. Jones.
All right, so case number 0124, we recommend that we send it back to the Department of Inspector General for further investigation on that case. The purpose of that will allow them some additional time to actually look into the situation, as well as conduct additional interviews with officers to better find out how they arrived at that address incorrectly.
So we've got a recommendation motion on the floor. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay. Any questions or other discussion about the content of the motion?
I think the only question I'd have is the further review in terms of getting a sense of how they arrived at that address, whether that's going to impact kind of the decision one way or the other. Like, do we find that to be dispositive?
It would impact it, yeah. So the officers, that particular case involved a call on a warrant, I believe, or a wanted person. They arrived at the wrong address, and so there is questions and concerns about how they got to that point. They're saying Google Maps, but it's not clear whether or not they just used Google Maps to locate it, or what happened when they actually arrived at the location. Did they double check and triple check the address to get it? So that could influence the outcome of our vote.
And if I recall, you said there's no policy specific to what happened in that case, correct? So my assumption is, based on the response, your committee's probably making a recommendation.
Going to make a recommendation,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion on case number 0124? Seeing none, I'd call for a vote. All in favor of returning the case to the Department of Inspector General for that further investigation, please raise your hands. Okay, no oppositions, no abstention, motion carries. Dr. Jones, back to you.
The other case was that 0191? Case 0191, this is the one we agreed with allegation 1. However, we disagreed with allegation 2 for this case because of the officer's comment to the individual. we thought it was insensitive given the context of what happened. So,
You'd move to.
so do we have to do these separately? So for allegation 1, to remove to accept allegation 1.
I think you can make them in the same motion.
Okay, so we move to accept allegation 1, and we move to substantiate allegation 2.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the floor agreeing with allegation 1, but changing the recommendation in allegation 2 to a finding of sustained.
Yes.
Okay, may I have a second? Okay, we've got a second. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, no opposition, no abstention, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next up, we'll have, pause. Next up, because we do have a quorum, I'd like to call our attention back to the minutes from the previous meeting. Would anyone like to, or I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes as given? Okay, may I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of accepting the minutes, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Any abstained? Okay. Board Member Strickland abstained. Ms. Brock. All right, turning it over to committees 2 and 3 for their report out. Don't know which one of you is going first.
You're going to read our.
Oh, yeah, okay. I just had a quick, board members, Younger and Jackson, wanted me to bring up. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here tonight due to their schedule conflicts, but we did meet on May 19th as our whole committee and discuss the cases and agreed upon our findings, which we'll discuss here shortly. So they just wanted to give their info. They were not able to make it tonight.
And you are tabling case number 25-0140.
Right.
Correct?
We
for
just
next
couldn't
meeting.
get to the BWC
Okay.
in time. So we'll have that for our next meeting to report on.
Perfect.
All right, so we split our committee report out, so I have a few, and then Dr. Ford will take up the rest of them. This first one is complaint number 2023-0261. On February 11th, 2023, Columbus Division of Police officers were involved in a shooting which resulted in a victim's death. On March the 7th, 2023, the Civilian Review Board voted to initiate a complaint and have the City of Columbus Department of the Inspector General open an investigation into the officers involved shooting that occurred. On March the 10th, the Columbus DIG opened a complaint and it was placed on administrative hold pending the investigation conducted by the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. On January the 13th, 2025, the Columbus DIG received information from the Firearms Review Board advising their investigation of the shooting was complete and their findings were sent to the Internal Affairs Bureau. On the same day, the Columbus DIG retrieved the information from IAB and initiated an investigation into the shooting, which occurred in the Home Depot parking lot on Stringtown Road in Grove City. The Columbus DIG did not conduct a full investigation, rather an administrative review of the BCI's investigation and a review of the FRB administrative review documentation. The Columbus DIG also reviewed body-worn camera footage and applicable CPD directives and policies. The investigation found that the BCI completed their investigation and provided their findings to the Franklin County prosecuting attorney for a grand jury review. The grand jury returned a notice of no indictment for the officers involved shooting. The FRB found that the discharge of the officers' firearms was intentional and not in violation of policy as set forth in the division's directives. The Columbus DIG agrees with the FRB findings that the officers' actions were supported by policies and directives. Therefore, the Columbus DIG recommends the investigation be closed with the finding of administrative closure. Additionally, the FRB investigation found that one officer did not have his body-worn camera activated at the time of the incident. CPD conducted an internal investigation, and the investigation found the officers in violation of the CPD policies and directives. The CPD sergeant who investigated the officers recommended oral counseling to ensure that there are no further violation of the policy. The Columbus DIG agrees with the CPD internal investigation findings and recommends that the allegation be closed with the finding of administrative closure. 2023
Are we holding the discussion?
For when the motions, I mean, but if you have a specific question now.
Yeah, I do. So for that, in that case, one of the finding was about not using the body-worn camera or not turning the body-worn camera on. Is there a reason that the Department Inspector General noted that as administrative closure as opposed to sustaining that particular allegation, even though that you all closed the case itself with that finding of sustained? Just wanted to get an insight into the decision there.
Yes, in this case, the officer was already disciplined for that, and that's the reason why we just did an administrative closure. Had we found that and the officer not been disciplined, then we would do our normal recommendation that it goes to the chief and disciplinary actions occur within the confines of the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay. I think did you all as a group kind of discuss this in terms of your thought as to whether this should be administratively closed or sustained?
We did discuss it, of course, in our group as with all of the cases, but outside of the fact that we did listen to the Attorney General, I was going to call her the Attorney General, the Inspector General in regards to discipline that already occurred, so us issuing yet another finding on the officer was just, I think that's a little.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that given the fact that there was it seems to be that the finding was a violation of sustained, and that is not, and just because of the fact that discipline already occurred after the fact, like in a lot of these situations, these after action situations with BCI or others, that discipline could or could not occur. But I think for purposes for the record of the Department of Inspector General Civilian Police Review Board, I do think it's worth noting, documenting an allegation of sustained if that was part of the finding.
In the report, agreed with, like, didn't make a finding contrary to, and maybe we can get some idea from counsel about the duplicitous nature of, like, I don't know that it does anything for us to
The level of discipline probably would
duplicate
have supported
discipline
the-
when that's already been given for this specific incident.
I will go. I
Each other, but I'll let her go
I think we're
first.
like telephonically reading each other's minds
Right.
here at this point. But because the officer has already been disciplined, the officer likely will not be disciplined again. If the board wants to recommend a sustain, the board can do that. Likely, there's going to be no discipline from it. So it really is up to the board here. The IG can make her decision with regard to whether or not she is going to recommend a finding of sustain to the board, and then the board can make its own independent decision about whether or not the board wants to agree with the IG's finding and proceed with a sustained finding. However, if this officer has already been disciplined for the same conduct, he cannot be disciplined again for it.
Again, I'm not counsel for DIG, but I am for the board. We may disagree a little bit. It's not exactly the same thing, but someone who's in jail, serves time, pleads guilty, but then already did the time in jail, they get credit for the time that they served. I think the more accurate finding would be sustained, with an indication in the report that the discipline has already been handed down. But again, since you've already made your decision to do administrative closure, if you want to go against that and just say we think sustained is more accurate in terms of a finding, you're able to do that.
Yeah. That's helpful. Yeah, I think just given this situation, I think sustained for this particular case, because that was found to be the case. And with obviously the understanding that disciplinary action already occurred here, and again, that would be up to chain of command anyway. So that would be my recommendation, would to disagree with this particular finding. But obviously, we're not moving on any motions yet. We can do that a little later on. I did have one specific question, an additional specific question, which is the CPD internal investigation process. So could someone give me a refresher on when they do an internal investigation? Is it because of the BCI or the situation with an officer-involved shooting, or not? Because my understanding was that, most of those, it's a different process. It's like a review or something. So can someone explain why in this instance there's an internal investigation, whereas in another instance, CPD does a review, but it's up to the Department Inspector General to investigate or BCI to investigate.
I'm going to try to explain. So, officer-involved shootings we know are done by BCI. And so there's a process. So once that process goes over to the prosecutor's office and it comes back and they find that they're not going to criminally charge, then the command does a review where I believe it goes to the Firearms Review Board. That's just their process. And once that process ends, then the investigation will go over to IAB and then we get it. What we look at is whether or not the incident that occurred, was there a violation of policy and procedure. So we may not necessarily investigate the criminal aspect, which is what was done with the shooting, but we look at administratively. So hopefully that answers your question on that part. There are times that the command does do different investigations that don't come to us because we only investigate citizens' complaints. But this was a officer-involved shooting where the board saw that and the board initiated that investigation. So therefore, once it was closed, once the criminal part was done and we were notified, then we opened the investigation and continued on. Because we won't investigate a complaint that's criminally being investigated. We just kind of step back.
It's helpful clarification. I guess the question I have, though, is that so BCI obviously handles the investigation process, but in terms of the CPD internal investigation and the timing of that, is there not a reason that you all didn't, you all aren't on the same timeline as CPD doing their internal investigation?
Part of it's in our rules and regulations, is that if CPD is doing an internal investigation, our investigation or the IG's investigation is paused. And so that process was baked in way back at the beginning. And I can't recall, correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Ross, but I can't recall if it's also part of the FOP contract, but there is that was one of the procedures we established fairly early, was that if there was this co-occurring investigation happening to determine criminal charges, ours would be paused until that one was concluded. I'm assuming that the next case, which is also 23, is in the same bucket, because I want to say that around the same time, we asked for 3 different cases to be initiated or investigated by board complaint, and they're coming back around because those BCI and I investigations have concluded recently.
I will answer your question, but it looks like Board Member Strickland has a follow-up, so I want to make sure I answer it comprehensively, unless you want to ask after I answer.
You want me to? Yeah.
It looked like you had a follow-up question.
I do have a follow-up.
Okay.
So,
you want to ask it
and I
now,
know you're ready for it.
to...
I appreciate it. So I understand waiting, BCI is going to do their criminal investigation. Where I'm kind of not sure about is why the DIG waits for an internal investigation for CPD to do its internal investigation versus, when the BCI, when that investigation is over and then we weigh in. Is that because the CPD process is happening? I'm just trying to figure out that timeline, and then what's keeping that from being the case every time? What gives the authority for CPD to do its own internal investigation? And let's say a citizen-initiated complaint or a board-initiated complaint. I'm just trying to get some clarity there as to that timing.
So
there.
I think that might be fact specific, and I am not familiar enough with how this case originated and why CPD did their own internal investigation. So I would have to look back to see, and I can give you an answer as to the pausing of an administrative investigation while a criminal investigation is going on. One, yes, that is contractual. So in the contract, anytime there is an active criminal investigation, the timeline for the IG to do their investigation is paused. That is because the IG can, through Garrity, demand that an officer participate in an investigation. And so if that same officer has criminal allegations, he or she has constitutional rights, right, that Garrity would get in the way of. And so you have to wait until you do that so that any information that is provided through Garrity to the IG is not held against the officer in any criminal proceedings that happen. And so that is why that administrative investigation is put on pause until the criminal investigation has been completed. So both legal and contractual factors that weigh into why an administrative investigation is paused until a criminal investigation is over. To your point about the internal investigation that occurred by CPD, I would need to look back at the case, and I can probably do that in this meeting and maybe get you an answer by the end of the meeting if you think it's going to hold up your vote.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, because I think I understand the administrative piece, but I think the internal CPD investigation, I'm wondering why that happened prior to you all investigating the process and where the authority comes. And I don't know if that's in the contract there. I can understand if they're doing the review, which is maybe different from an investigation. I don't know semantics there, but that's something I just wanted some more insight on.
I know that there are certain
Wasn't this on
SOPs.
hold because BCI was still investigating the issue. So we had to put ours on hold while BCI was still doing theirs. So this was a board-initiated complaint. So by the time we got to it, and the shooting happened in February, we sent our request in March. And by March, they were already waiting on the BCI review. So we would have had to wait, I think.
Well, I understand. Maybe we would have to wait, but CPD, I don't know their timing of when they do their internal investigations. I mean, typically, the idea is that BCI would come in as an independent agency to investigate. And so I don't know CPD's internal process. Maybe this is a question for the commander and the chief when we get to, but kind of the timing of when they do internal investigations and when they just do a review of a particular case.
And I'm with you on the timelines, but I think the more interesting thing to me is it's March of 2023 by the time BCI even reports back, but then their firearms group doesn't even review it until 2025. So, that's not our inspector general. They would, they would know.
But
yeah, I don't know. That's a question I think when we do that chain of command, that's another question we need to ask them. What is your timeline on your internal investigations as it relates to DIG investigations that we send forward? Because I don't think, Inspector, you may be looking through all kinds of work, and Attorney Ross, but
I was just looking at the summary really quickly of the investigation, and it seems like only part of this incident was reviewed internally by CPD, that part that was relevant to the Firearms Review Board, so not the entire incident, just the part of the incident that would have gone directly to them, which is likely rooted in some sort of SOP or directive that says immediately following the use of a firearm, the Firearm Review Board looks over kind of what happened in that incident. So I would then go back and look at that and probably do a deeper dive into that particular SOP or directive. It likely says whenever a firearm is used in a specific type of incident, it's going straight to that board. So I don't know that it's a general rule, right? Not every time, like you said, is IAB reviewing something, but there are certain SOPs that requires chain of command to look at an incident, which is why you'll see like a supervisory report, right? Anytime there's a use of force, you're always going to have a CPD chain of command look at that, make a decision, and that would be a part of what the IG receives from CPD as she does her own separate investigation. So again, I think it is a question for CPD to answer, but is probably rooted in a specific directive that we can provide to you.
Yeah, I was wondering what directive gives that authority versus kind of where, the Department Inspector General has the independent authority to do the investigation when it comes to those complaints that are not that after it's gone through the criminal review or investigation.
I'm sure this was probably a little even more nuanced because there was a victim, there was a death. There's a fatality in this one, so I'm sure there might be even a different process that's got to follow through when there's someone who has been murdered in that or killed in that situation. All right, let me go on to 2023-1271. On August 29th, 2023, a complaint was filed with the Inspector General alleging misconduct by a Columbus police officer. The complainant alleged the misconduct occurred on July 18th from the officer's social media X account, formerly known as Twitter. The complainant alleged the officer made derogatory remarks from their account. The post stemmed from the response to a music video, Try That in a Small Town. This music video was pulled from Country Music Television due to the fact that the video was filmed at the site of a lynching, amid accusations that its lyrics and message are offensive. The officer's account responded to a series of posts regarding the music video. An ex-user responded to the officer's account stating, CMT pulled the video because it's a pro-lynching video. The officer's account then responded to the post stating, and back in the day, that was a penalty you got for doing really bad things. Today, you get nothing. Additionally, the officer's account showed him in his Columbus Division of Police uniform. The Columbus DIG investigation consisted of a review of the officer's X posts, a review of the definition of lynching, a review of the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act, personal correspondence between the officer and another CPD personnel, and a review of CPD directives. The investigation found that the officer in question was in violation of the CPD's directives regarding social media. The officer's post regarding lynching appears to be racially insensitive due to the facts and history surrounding lynching. Therefore, it is recommended that the allegation against the officer be closed as sustained. Complaint 2025-0088. On January 31st, 2025, the complaint was filed with the Department of Inspector General alleging misconduct by a Columbus police officer. The complaint stemmed from a traffic stop that was conducted while the officer was on a routine patrol. The complainant alleged, 1, that she should not have been handcuffed during a traffic stop where she was cited for having an expired license, and 2, she was pulled over under false pretenses. The Columbus DIG investigation consisted of an interview of the complainant, an interview of the focus officer, a review of body-worn camera footage, a review of the computer-aided dispatch from the incident, a review of the relevant legal updates, and a review of applicable CPD divisions directives. The investigation found the officer was within policy to handcuff the complainant during the traffic stop. Additionally, the investigation found the officer conducted a traffic stop that was within policy, and the officer did not conduct a stop under false pretenses. Therefore, the Department of Inspector General recommends the allegation 1 be closed with a finding of exonerated, and allegation 2 be closed with a finding of unfounded. I was just looking at another thing that I wanted. Okay, that's all for that one. 2025-0095. This complaint from the Internal Affairs Bureau that alleged misconduct by the Columbus Division of Police Property Room. The complainant said she tried to retrieve her deceased son's iPhone from the CPD property. I saw CTV went ballistic over there because I hit the button to the microphone. And I know when he stands up, there's something wrong. I'm back on. The complainant alleged that she, 1, was notified by CPD personnel that her deceased son's iPhone was lost in the CPD property room and was advised that there was an open investigation regarding the lost phone. The complainant said she believes either someone misplaced the iPhone or someone does not want the phone to be found. The Columbus DIG made contact with the complainant regarding her complaint, but did not conduct a full investigation, rather an administrative review of the documents retrieved from the IAB that included a letter of information completed by the Property Control Unit Sergeant, the A10 routing sheet for correspondence from PCU, a CPD internal division letter of information regarding the complainant's missing property, and a CPD evidence and property inventory report. Pertaining to the allegation The investigation found that the sworn personnel involved with handling this property followed all policies and procedures for handling and logging the device. The PCU employees civilians who were the last to be documented to have had the property prior to it going missing. As the Columbus DIG has no jurisdiction over these civilians, the Columbus DIG defers to the chain of command's findings and recommends the investigation be closed with the finding of administrative closure. 2025-0105. This complaint alleged excessive use of force by Columbus Division of Police. The complaint alleged, one, the officer used excessive force on him while he was holding his child. The Columbus DIG investigation consisted of an interview with the complainant, a review of computer-aided dispatch, a review of body-worn camera, a review of video provided by the complainant's wife, a review of the use of force report associated with this incident, and an interview with the focus officer, interviews with witness officers, and a review of CPD policies and procedures. In regards to this allegation, the investigation found no evidence that substantiated the complainant's allegation. Therefore, it is recommended that this allegation be closed as unfounded. My last one is 2025-0117. And this is a complaint that alleged on February the 8th, 2025 at approximately 2 p.m., the Columbus Division of Police officer, one, illegally towed the complainant's vehicle, and two, got into the complainant's face and pushed him. The Columbus DIG's investigation consisted of a telephone interview with the complainant, a review of computer-aided dispatch data, a review of body-worn camera footage, and a review of CPD policies and procedures. The investigation found no evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegations that a CPD officer illegally towed his vehicle or that the officer got in his face and pushed him. Therefore, it is recommended that the allegations 1 and 2 be closed with the finding of unfounded. We do make a special note here that the officer may need a little additional training in regards to making the decision about towing vehicles, because he realized that he asked another party about whether she wants the vehicle towed or not. The officer should have made that call himself. That's all the ones I have. I'll yield to Dr. Ford.
Thank you. And I'll just go backwards here just to pick up one, and I'll get back in order here. This is complaint number 2025-0063. On January 27, 2025, the City of Columbus Department of Inspector General received a complaint alleging on January 17, 2025, at approximately 7 p.m., CPD officers, number 1, targeted the complainant, number 2, were aggressive for no reason, number 3, forcefully and aggressively snatched him out of the car and slammed him against the door, number 4, completed an unlawful search by touching him under his butt, and when asked not to do that again, they did it again and harder, and number 5, failed to return the complainant's identification. The Columbus DIG's investigation consisted of a review of an email forwarded from IAB, a telephone interview with the complainant, a telephone interview with the complainant's mother, a review of BWC footage, a review of computer dispatch information, a review of the police report, an in-person interview with 2 focus officers, and a review of CPD policies and procedures. The evidence investigation found evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegation that the CPD officers targeted him and were aggressive for no reason. A review of BWC footage and officer statements showed that the officers were discussing how they're going to, quote, get into the complainant's pockets before any crime occurred. An officer stated aloud on the radio that they would be making a traffic stop even before a traffic violation occurred. One of the involved officers can be heard on BWC suggesting that the juvenile should fight him and claim during his statement that he had to suspect that he said that to every person he arrests. Therefore, it is recommended that allegation 1 and 2 be closed with the finding of sustained. In regards to allegations 3 and 4, the investigation found that no evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegations of misconduct. The officer assisted the complainant out of the car and used trained technique to place handcuffs on the complainant. The officer's actions were within CPD policy. The complainant was placed under arrest, and the officers searched the complainant incident to the arrest. The search lasted under a minute, and the officer followed CPD procedure. Therefore, it is recommendation that allegations 3 and 4 be closed with finding unfounded. In regard to allegation 5, the investigation found evidence to substantiate the other complainant's allegation that his ID was never returned. During one of the officer's interviews, he admitted to forgetting to return the ID and was placed in the property room. A review of the CAD also showed that an ID was placed in the property room. Therefore, it is recommended that allegation 5 be closed with finding of sustained. Our committee reviewed this at length, and we agree with the DIG's findings. However, we did want to add on, when this goes to the chain of command, that we have some serious issues with this type of policing. In the initial, it was very stereotypical. It was profiling, I believe. The officer's conversation with the complainant's son were inappropriate, and the officer stated that the arrestee had a chance to fight him, but he didn't, and called him a pussy for not fighting him. I think was totally inappropriate and should be disciplined for that. And this officer, during the investigation, stated to the DIG that is his typical statement that he gives to patients that are to arrestees that they had a chance to fight him. And we just think that is inappropriate, and that should also be passed on the chain of command. Also, we thought it was inappropriate trying to find a reason to stop this person, and some minor traffic violations of his mother who was driving the car, failure to use a turn signal, failing to stop at a sidewalk, and then threatening to have the car towed for these minor violations was just inappropriate, and we think that the chain of command should review the whole case with this totality of circumstances and discipline accordingly. And I'll get back in order here now. This is case 2025-0123. The complainant filed a complaint with the City of Columbus Department Inspector General against the Columbus Division of Police officer. The complainant alleged, number one, the officers were rude and discourteous to her when he mediated a dispute in which she was involved with another party. The Columbus DIG's investigation consisted of a review of computer-aided dispatch information, a review of body-worn camera footage, a review of the CPD incident report, a review of applicable CPD policies, and an in-person interview with the complainant. In regard to the complainant's allegation that the officer was rude and discourteous, the Columbus DIG investigation found that the officer's handling of the disturbance incident to be within CPD policy. Therefore, it is recommended the allegation against this officer be closed with the finding of unfounded. Our committee also reviewed this report, and we agree with the DIG's findings. That is 2025-0123. This is case 2025-0125. On February 12th, 2025, the complainant filed a complaint with the City of Columbus DIG alleging misconduct by CPD officers. The complaint stemmed from an incident which resulted in the complainant being charged with felony drug possession in the first degree. The complainant alleged, number one, the officer used excessive force on him by slamming him to the ground. Number two, the officers profiled him. And number three, the officers illegally searched him. The Columbus DIG's investigation consisted of a review of the complainant's voicemail regarding his complaint, a review of the arrest U100 or U10.100 from the incident, a review of the body-worn camera footage, a review of the completed use of force report from the incident, a review of CAD from the incident, a review of court records, and a review of relevant CPD policies and procedures. The use of force report was completed by the focus officer's chain of command when the Columbus DIG received the complaint. In regard to allegation 1, the Columbus DIG concurs with CPD's findings the officer's use of force was reasonable and within policy. The officer's use of force was not excessive, and it was found the officers used a level 1 use of force, which is physically placed on the ground. The Columbus DIG recommends allegation 1 be closed with the finding of unfounded. In regard to allegation 2, the Columbus DIG found the officers did not profile the complainant. The officers were working uniform patrol when they observed the complainant committing a traffic violation. The officers then attempted to initiate a traffic stop, and the complainant ignored the officer's lawful commands. Additionally, the complainant failed to identify himself and attempted to leave the detainment. The officer's actions were supported by CPD policy. Therefore, the Columbus DIG recommends allegation 2 be closed with finding unfounded. Lastly, in regard to allegation 3, the investigation found officers did not illegally search the complainant. The officer discovered suspected narcotics during the course of the arrest of the complainant. A search incident to arrest is within CPD policy. The officer's actions are supported by CPD policy and procedure. Therefore, the Columbus DIG recommends allegation 3 be closed with a finding of unfounded. And our committee also reviewed this at length and agree with the DIG's findings. This is complaint number 2025-0129. On February 13th, 2025, the complainant filed a complaint with the City of Columbus DIG. The complaint stemmed from an interaction between the complainant and CPD officers responding to a 1016 disturbance call on February 11th, 2025. The complainant alleged officers used excessive force during his arrest on February 11th, 2025. The Columbus DIG's investigation consists of an interview with the complainant, a review of the CAD report for the incident, a review of the officer's body-worn camera, a review of the arrest U-100 report, a review of the CPD use of force report, interviews with the focus officers, and a review of applicable CPD procedures and policies. In regard to the allegation, the investigation revealed no evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegation. The complainant's interview was largely inconsistent with what the investigation revealed. The responding officer's actions aligned with CPD policy and procedure for this type of run. The investigation also revealed no evidence rising to the level of excessive use of force. Therefore, it is recommended this allegation also be closed with the finding of unfounded. And our committee reviewed this, and we agree with the DIG's findings. This is complaint number 25-0132. On February 14th, 2025, the Columbus DIG received a complaint alleging misconduct by a CPD officer via email. The complainant alleged, number one, an officer was biased against him due to his personal relationship with the other party involved in the incident. The Columbus DIG's investigation consists of an interview with the complainant, an interview with the other party involved in the incident, a review of the police report associated with the incident, an interview with the focus officer, and a review of CPD policies and procedures. In regard to this allegation, the investigation found no evidence to substantiate this allegation. Therefore, it is recommended this allegation be closed as unfounded. Our committee reviewed this and agree with the DIG's findings. And in our list here, this is 2025-0140 is the complaint we asked to be tabled until next month, so we can review the BWC findings. This is complaint 2025-0164. On March 3rd, 2025, the City of Columbus Department Inspector General received a citizen complaint forwarded by email from a Deputy Chief of Police, which alleged on February 5th, 2025, a Columbus Division of Police officer, number one, touched the complainant's vagina, number two, touched her buttocks, number three, raped her, and number four, sexually assaulted her. The Columbus DIG's investigation consists of a review of the CPD's investigation memorandum, a review of the computer-aided dispatch data, a review of body-worn camera footage, and a review of CPD policies and procedures. The Columbus DIG's investigation concurs with the CPD's investigation that complainant's allegations are unfounded. A review of BWC and the interdivisional letter of information from CPD directly contradicts all four of the complainant's allegations. As no additional allegations were made other than the allegations of criminal conduct, the CPD or the Columbus DIG recommends a finding of administrative closure. And our committee appreciates the referral for the Deputy Chief for our review on this case, and we agree with the findings of the DIG. This is case 2025-0205. On March 13th, 2025, the City of Columbus Department Inspector General received a complaint that alleged 5 Columbus Division of Police officers walked up to his bedroom window and looked inside while his wife was fresh out of the shower and changing. The Columbus DIG's investigation consists of a review of the voicemail left by the complainant, a review of body-worn camera footage, and a review of CPD policies and procedures. The investigation found no evidence to substantiate the complainant's allegation that CPD officers walked up to his bedroom window and looked inside while his wife was fresh out of the shower and changing. CPD officers never walked up to the complainant's window, and the complainant's statement is inconsistent with body-worn camera footage. Therefore, it is recommended this allegation be closed also with a finding of unfounded. Our committee reviewed this report, and we agree with the DIG's findings. And our last case is case 2025-0233, or 0233, correct. On February 10th, 2025, the City of Columbus DIG received a complaint alleging excessive use of force and misconduct by Columbus Division of Police officers. The complainant alleged, number one, an officer used excessive force on his son. Number two, another officer told him and his wife they were bad parents. The Columbus DIG's investigation consisted of interviews with the complainant, a review of CAD data, an interview with a staff member of Marion Franklin High School, a review of body-worn camera, a review of the use of force report for the incident, an interview with a focus officer, and a review of CPD policies and procedures. In regards to allegation 1, the investigation found no evidence to substantiate the complaint's allegation. Therefore, it is recommended this allegation be closed as unfounded. In regards to allegation 2, the investigation found no evidence to substantiate the complaint's allegation as well. Therefore, it is recommended this allegation be closed as unfounded as well. And our committee reviewed this case in extent, and we agree with the Inspector General's findings. And those are my cases.
All right, so we've got, all right, want to ask you all, do you all want to make separate motions on any of these? I know you had additional kind of admonitions that you wanted to make on 0063, and we had an open discussion on 0261 as to whether, given the facts, whether we want to recommend finding of sustained alongside of the CPD finding of sustained. And so I want to put that out there. Do we want to handle those two cases separate from the rest of them?
Take
Okay.
all that we don't have a concern with, then we'll just do the.
Okay, so on case numbers 23-1271, 25-0063, -0088, -0095, -0105, -0117, -0123, -0125, -0129, -0132, -0205, and -0233. I'd entertain a motion to accept those as reported. Well, first you motion, then you second, then you discussion. Yes, and 164. Apologies.
On 0063, do we need to add anything on there in regards to?
I'm sorry. You're right. Delete 63 from my request. Do we want to make a motion on all but 0261, 0063, 0140?
So moved.
So moved. All right. May I have a second? I have a second from Dr. Ford. Now, discussions or questions about those.
Thank you. The one question I had was related to the social media post by a CPD officer. I was kind of having a hard time understanding the timing of that particular case. That was something that occurred, I think, in 2023, and then there was multiple FOP extension requests, or at least there was an extension request that was denied. Then FOP filed a lawsuit at some point regarding the ability for the Department Inspector General to investigate. I just wasn't sure in terms of the timing and even where that currently is at. Just could I get an update on that from the Department Inspector General?
Yes, I think you're speaking on 23-1271. So that finally came to a close. I think we did kind of footnote it in the report that the court, I believe, the FOP actually filed a motion to pull back. And so since it was closed, we were able to move forward. So we just moved forward with what our findings was. And that officer is no longer with the department, but, and I can let the attorney speak. So I know that officers, when they retire, they want to retire in good standing. But if there's a case that is pending, they don't get to retire in good standing. So we wanted to make sure that, due to all of the court motions for us to not move forward, we just held it until the court allowed us to. And so therefore, we wanted to make sure that we did close it with our findings of recommendation for sustain so that it does go on that officer's record.
And what about the part where the FOP denied the extension request? Is that, I'm just trying to get a sense of what, once this gets forwarded on to CPD chain of command, how they're going to handle this particular determination.
That is a really good question that I don't have an answer for, but I can definitely research how CPD is going to handle that now that the officer is retired. I can look into that.
question we can also ask when chain of command reps come to our meeting about what the typical, like what happens in that type of scenario.
Thank you. That would be helpful. Yeah, because I think just generally getting a sense of where they, what actions they take or decide not to take after they receive information from the Department of Inspector General Civilian Police Review Board is something that I would love some more consistency and transparency from CPD on, and so this would be a great example to hopefully have an answer for that. Yep.
And I would like to know, please send Ms. Brock that question.
That's okay. That's a quick. I'll make a motion.
No, you don't have to move. Send it, just email her the question. Yeah,
Email that specific. Okay.
Yeah.
We can,
I think to that point, it's good that we get all of these questions that we need for CPD, at least organized and put in something so that, I mean, every meeting we have some question that we need to ask CPD, but we thrust it on the Inspector General, but she can't answer for them, nor probably does she want to. But I think we need to have a running tally of all of our questions so that when we do have them, or when Dr. Jones summons the CPD to our meeting, I'm teasing. When they come to our meeting, and perhaps it might be good that we get them in a rotation every so often, that someone from their chain of command, one of the first assistant chiefs, comes to hear from us directly some of our concerns, because that's, I think, even going back to Kyle in looking at the article that was in the paper the other day, the transparency, I think, will occur when we include them at this table where we are. And I think of us asking direct questions to them. They hear them after, but I think they need to hear them from us to them and not through the Inspector General.
I think that is a reasonable interpretation, but I also believe that that's just not the case from what we've seen, at least what I've seen over the last 3+ years on the review board. I think that, and there's some, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but I mean, there are some direct quotes, right? Now, again, what someone is speaking to may not be representative of the entire board, and I know that in that article you're referencing, the chief also did not make any specific comments, but one of the things that I do find is that, it seems to be that some folks see it as a paper tiger. Really, they just see this as a review board.
And say we have open motion and a second. We need to take a vote on the cases that were presented, okay? Because this is now waxing philosophically beyond the motions that are on the table for these cases. I would like to take a vote call the vote on the motions that were proposed and the second that was given. All in favor of accepting, please say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Board Member Strickland abstains on all those cases. Ms. Brock.
Well, the reason I'm abstaining is because it is connected, right? Like we are making recommendations.
Is it connected to a specific case? Because that is where
yes, in
we
particular.
have gotten messy in the sense of we've gotten complaints from FOP, and we actually have a time at the end of our meeting to have these policy discussions. Now, unless this discussion is specific to one of these numbered cases, our vote, if we want our motions and our votes to be clean. They're not clean if we're now talking around a more general policy discussion that is not tied to a specific case.
The specific case that I'm referencing is a complaint was filed a year or two ago, or whatever. The incident was a year or two ago. The FOP denied the extension request. I understand that they dismissed their lawsuit, but sure, we can go ahead and move that forward, but if we don't even know how they're going to respond to the particular cases that we're doing, I don't see why we just keep sending things over, abstaining or not, voting for it or not, and then not having a lot of transparency into once it actually hits the desk of CPD and chain of command. And this is not, like, we've talked about this consistently every time.
And and we actually have chain of command coming to our meeting. Ms. Brock has asked repeatedly, and the deadline was given prior to you arriving at this meeting. The deadline was given again, that questions for that meeting and for those representatives need to be in by the end of June. And this is the same protocol we've taken when we've had the chief come in, when we have the director of public safety come in. We ask for the board to submit questions. Ms. Brock, how many questions have been submitted to you from the board thus far? Zero questions.
I mean, last
and
time I
yet
checked,
we have
end of June is end of June. That's
but
in
we have
20
known,
days.
Mr. Strickland, we have known for the past 4 months that they are coming and have been asking repeatedly for questions to be submitted. So the fact that we are complaining about a lack of transparency and consistency when not a single board member has submitted the questions that we want answered yet to Ms. Brock. And hey, if by June 30th, there's 10 questions, great. But I have been asking for the past 3 meetings for people to send questions to Ms. Brock. No one has sent any yet. And so what I am saying is, this part of the conversation, I didn't cut you off when you were actually talking about that case. When we moved from that case to talking more generally, that is when I say we need to move this along, because that's actually a sustained case. So it's a sustained case. So the question of what is chain of command going to do after this fact is something we don't know yet, but we can ask chain of command when they are here at our meeting in the fall. Next, this board had, the subcommittee had questions on case number 23-2061. I believe that is the case in which the question came up as to whether we would want to, instead of passing along the recommendation as it was written, but instead to make a finding of sustained in light of the finding of sustained misbehavior from within CPD's process. So I'm posing to you.
In the committees.
Yes, that was, yes. So I'm proposing what is the motion we want on that case, and then I will give an opportunity if anyone wants to make any amendments. We'd have to vote on amendments for that motion. So the floor is open for a motion to be made on that case number. That is 23-0261.
Submitted.
Okay, we've got a motion that it be approved as submitted. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, now there is a second. Are there any questions, discussions, or submitted amendments to that motion?
Yeah, I mean, I would amend the motion if we're going to establish a process here that supposedly has some sort of consistent standards, that in that instance that we note that the finding of sustained as opposed to administrative closure for that allegation. And I'd be interested and curious as to maybe the board not interested in having that or not, but I'm open to that interpretation.
So your amendment is it your amendment, or that you want to establish a practice of, in these situations, whether the board should?
Yeah, to me, it's similar to, it's not exactly like, but it's similar to a situation in which there was an officer who's retired, but instead of just kind of closing that particular case, they still issue a discipline recommendation. And so it's not exact. And so in this particular instance, to have it on the record, one way or the other, that would be the recommendation. Because for clarification, when CPD issued their discipline, where do they mark that somewhere in particular? What's the process there? How does that go in their internal system?
It would be included in the officer's HR file. Their personnel file will have a finding of sustained for that very same conduct. So that is why I would caution the IG to recommend a finding of sustained for the same conduct again, especially since the officer has already been disciplined for that same conduct.
And if the officer were not disciplined for that particular conduct, how would you?
So the IG, through the charter, has the ability to review any investigations that are completed by the Internal Affairs Bureau. And so the IG can make a decision or can receive a recommendation from the board to review that IAB's finding. I do not know, and this is something I may have to get back to you on, Board Member Strickland, whether or not you can reopen that particular investigation, likely not, but the IG can review the investigation and maybe put out a statement that the IG would have come to a different finding if the IG would have independently reviewed the investigation.
Okay, that's helpful. I think, yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that I would need in this particular instance is that if getting more sense of that process, the standardization process, because in the future, there might be an instance where, you know, there's just no fine, or like they don't issue discipline, they don't find it to be sustained, and then we've closed it. So I don't know if we need to actually make a motion, but a recommendation I would have is that we do some sort of statement or something like that from the Department Inspector General if there is a.
And I would anticipate that this type of situation doesn't happen as we proceed with this process moving forward, but because it's still a fairly new process and because of the length of time that some of these issues are investigated for, you will have older cases like the 2023, 2022 shootings where there was no citizen complaint ever filed and there was no board to recommend a separate investigation. And so you will have these completed investigations of incidents, and that is just a reality that we probably have to accept, that there were investigations that were done under the old process, that there have already been findings and have already been discipline rendered or not rendered, and that, you know, we have to be fair to that officer. That officer's already gone through the process that was in place at the time in which the incident occurred. But when you have these newer incidents that happen, it can go through the full process. And if there is not a citizen complaint and the board wants to see it investigated, then the board can make that recommendation to the Inspector General to do so.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so just for clarity, do you want an amendment for a finding of sustained on the BWC violation in case number 23-0261?
I mean, I would, but I mean, I don't know if I have the votes. If I
mean, you
move
might
forward.
not. I'm going to call for a second
Yeah.
if that's the amendment you would like to propose.
That would be the amendment.
Okay, is there a second? There is no second, so calling a vote on the original motion. All in favor, please raise your hands. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. We've been talking around in circles now at this point. So the original motion was to keep the finding and, okay.
Okay, so I'll call the vote again. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Last case, case number 25-0063. During the recitation, Dr. Ford noted that the subcommittee agreed with the finding but would like to add an admonition about the seriousness of this type of policing rooted in stereotype and profiling is extremely inappropriate, that essentially in conjunction with the sustained findings, they want to pass along to chain of command just how, I don't want to use the wrong word for you, but just how disrespectful and abhorrent this was.
That's perfect.
Okay? So is that, who would like to make a motion and
Like,
taking that?
that's-
Okay,
You can have that on.
awesome. May I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, all in favor, please raise your hands. Or sorry, any questions or discussion? All right, all in favor?
The only thing I would like to see is just specific follow-up from this particular, I mean, obviously, this case and every case, I would like to see some follow-up.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hands.
I'll raise my hand.
Any opposed? Any abstains? Ayes have it. Thank you. All right, last but not least, again, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, please get your questions to Stephanie that you would like to have given to chain of command. And if you need to go back and look at prior meetings to see what are things that you previously wondered about, any parts of the process, please dedicate time to actually sending those questions over to Stephanie before the end of June. Aside from that, are there other issues that any board member would like to discuss?
Had a couple?
Yes, Dr. Ford.
Thank you. First of all, as we all know, in the last couple of weeks, there's been a rash of violence and shootings at law enforcement officers in Central Ohio. One deputy lost his life. Several other officers were injured in the line of duty, and I just think these senseless acts of violence towards law enforcement officers who go to work daily and risk their lives to protect us are just unacceptable. As our mission of oversight should include recognition, and for that, I send thoughts and condolences to the officers and their families and coworkers for their sacrifice. Secondly, I just want to remind everybody, I'm not sure if this is going to go out or not, of our review board DIG community town hall meeting coming up later this month, Wednesday the 25th at 6 o'clock at Stonewall Columbus. The address is 1160 North High Street. As our past community town hall meetings, we'll have a panel discussion, questions and answers, and refreshments. And it's a great opportunity for the community to come and learn more about how we do things, how things work, and how they can get involved. So I'd like to remind everybody that coming up on June 25th.
What time is that
6
event,
o'clock.
Dr. Ford? 6 p.m.
6 to
Thank you.
7:30. And thanks to Jarrell and his team, they've just done a great job getting this organized, so thank you.
Do we know how many board members are coming? Are we bound by that public thing where all of us can't be at the same place
Yes.
at the same time, or
Yes.
else it's constituted as a meeting?
Yes.
So that's the only question I just wanted.
Apparently only if we're discussing cases. Mr. Tobias did
Yeah, you
give
can go.
a update, so we can't talk about cases,
You can go.
but we can beat.
You can be
Town hall.
Right. So whatever line that, I mean, the reality is, if someone asks about a specific case, that is the response. Like if we begin discussing a specific case, then we have to have an Open Meetings Act. So generally, the ones that I have participated in, we have not had occasion to discuss current cases. So it's been an issue that we haven't, yeah.
I just didn't want there to be something and then we all.
Oh, absolutely. You do the count and then somebody has to leave?
Yeah,
No.
I'll vote.
Yes.
But Dr. Ford has gone all out, so please come.
We're
Filet
gonna sequester
mignon
Derek.
and everything is on the menu.
So apparently they're going to sequester you, Mr. Anderson. Any other issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue I would carry on that was limited because it got off track of the particular case that we were talking about is the issue around transparency. I'm going to keep saying it and bringing it up. I understand that the onus is on us as board members to submit questions. I also want to be clear that there are often times where we have submitted questions. And so I'm just like, I understand some of the hesitation here that it's my fault in some way that there were not specific questions that I have not submitted yet by this June 30th deadline. But these are all things that we have consistently brought up, and it's not just about how CPD answers our questions. It's also about how we operate as a board consistently to be more effective and impactful. And I think there have been times, often, not just me believing this to be the case, but others that believe that the board itself is relatively ineffective. And I think that is a fair criticism and concern. I think there's a lot of amazing work that's done here, and I think obviously the incredible work that's done by the Department Inspector General. But in terms of the process, once it gets to us and once it moves, I think there's got to be a more efficient way for this to work, because once the Department of Inspector General recommendation comes to us and then it comes to CPD in the chain of command, and then we're asking about follow-up on particular cases, it is way down the line for when we get any sort of follow-up from those cases. And so I'm just trying to open up, not to just lodge complaints here, but like open up genuine conversations about ways in which we can reform our process as a board so that we can be more effective and more impactful. Because right now, I think it's limited. I think, and that obviously there's some contractual conversations that have to happen, but I do think there's some process points for how we do our subcommittee, how we do our general meetings that could make that process more efficient moving forward. And so I just wanted to bring that up of what we could do, and maybe some updates on the tracking and the data base that we talked about. But are there other ways that we can operate as a board to be more efficient? Is a question that I wanted to bring up for the board members.
Do any other board members have any responses and/or questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
May I have a second? All in favor, please raise your hands. All right, motion adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.